was an eminent classical Bharatanatyam dancer. So he said he thought whenever he gets married and if he has a daughter, he will name her Sudha. And that's how I got this name Sudha. And my mother always wanted to be a dancer, but unfortunately, the circumstances didn't allow her. So she had nurtured a dream that if she gets married, if she has a daughter, she will make her a classical dancer. So I think when two people, ask destiny, ask the nature, then things get granted. And that's how probably my parents met. I was born, I was named Sudha, and I became a classical dancer. Life was it was such a beautiful life that I had. Coming from a very middle class background, a Brahmin family, South Indian Brahmin family, I was inculcated with the best of culture, best of tradition, which I still follow. And I thought, I could not have asked God for anything better than this. But you never know what's in store for you in life. Because at the age of 3, I started dancing, and I remember the days when my mother used to come to the school. She used to wait for me. After I used to finish my school, my mother used to carry that little tiffin box of mine. She used to feed me in the school, change my clothes, take me to the dance class, and I used to reach home at 9:30. By when I used to be, fast asleep on her shoulders. But she still took that, initiative. She always wanted me to be the dancer. She bore all the hardships. She used to actually carry me back home, and my father kept asking her, "Why do you torture this small little kid like this?" But somewhere, I also know the sacrifice that my dad made for my dancing. Because when he used to come back from office, every man wants his wife to be at home, to give him that cup of coffee, then give him that tiffin that he always wanted. But somewhere he used to come home and make his own coffee, eat the little biscuits that he could, catch up with, just because his wife was actually struggling and taking up all the hardships to make me a dancer. So that's how Sudha Chandran, the dancer, was born. Being the only child, people always thought that I was a very pampered child, which was absolutely not. Because my parents always made me feel that my mother used to keep telling me every time that your father goes out in the morning at 7 o'clock to earn his daily bread, comes back around 7:30. So you should understand the value of money. You cannot waste money. So if I am, putting in all my time for your dance and for your education, it means this is the only thing that we as parents from a middle class family can give you. And she always said, education is a blank check which can be encashed at any point of time. So that's how I completed my master's in economics. My father wanted me to do the IAS or the IFS, but unfortunately was at the age after I finished my 12th is when I met with a road accident, and I was the least affected. My mother was declared dead, which later on I found out was not correct because I saw her breathing and I actually lifted her and put her into the ambulance. My father was bleeding through his nose. The driver died on my lap. It was the gaudiest incident of my life. I had never seen death and an accident at such close quarters. And before the driver died, he asked me for some water, and unfortunately, there was no water around. There was a small little riverlet which was, going through, and I just put, take a little drop of water and put it into his mouth, and he breathed his last. So that was the most horrifying incident, which actually shook me up. Because coming from a very sheltered family, I really didn't know what was hardships of life. Though I came from a very, very middle class family, but I was never, my father and my mother never made me feel that I came from a middle class family, and they were actually working hard to make the two ends meet. But that is when I actually saw reality at such close quarters. And by the time we were admitted in the hospital, my father was taken to the gents ward, my mother was in the female ward, I was in the children's ward. And it took me 3 days actually to even know whether my parents were alive or not. After 3 days, it was like a Manmohan Desai film. And when I used to watch these films, I used to laugh. I said, ऐसा थोड़ी होता है कि बाप एक hospital में, माँ दूसरे hospital में, then they meet. But this actually happened with me. And 3 days is when I realized that my parents were alive. But by then, there was a small cut on my right ankle. The doctors, unfortunately, I mean, they oversaw that thing and they just, treated my fracture, the right femur fracture that I had. They put the plaster of Paris and they just sealed that wound, which after about 6 or 7 days turned into gangrene. And suddenly I found that the toe of my right leg was not moving. So I asked my mom, I said, what is this? Why is it not moving? And then my dad suddenly realized that we were in the wrong hospital because it is a government hospital. So he took a decision that, my daughter has to be shifted from here. And that's how I was moved from Tiruchirappalli, where this accident took place, to Chennai. And I was under the supervision of Dr. P.V.A. Mohandas. The moment he saw the wound, he said, oh my God. So that was the time I asked, I said, what happened? He said, no, nothing, nothing, nothing. So almost 15 days, they tried to clean the wound, they tried to save the limb, but unfortunately, there came a time after 15 days when the decision had to be taken because they saw that the gangrene was spreading into the body, and the decision was life or limb, which was not discussed with me though. My parents were called in, and my father gave his consent and said that yes, we want our daughter. And when I was told about this in the evening that we are going to take you to the operation theatre for an amputation, the word amputation was very new to me at that time. I didn't know what amputation was. So I asked the doctor, I said, you've been weaning me in and out of the operation theatre, so what's new in this? They said, amputation means we'll have to cut your leg because the gangrene is spreading and it's a threat to your life. So that was the time when these things actually dawned. And I said, how am I going to survive without a limb? A normal person, how could he survive? Second, I'm a dancer. How can I dance without a leg? And suddenly I felt that my life was finished. And I told my parents, I said, please don't give consent. I don't want to live. But my father said, he walked into the room and said, he held my hand and said, Sudha, I will be that leg. I will stand by you and we both together will win the battle. So I turned back and asked him, I said, for how long, Dad, will you be with me? Will you be with me lifelong? Is that promise that you can give me? And suddenly he had no answer. But then I looked at my parents, and being a minor, of course, I had no say in the matter. And I kept cursing God for that. I said, why did you make me a minor? If I was a major, I would not have given the consent. But at that time, as usual, the parents always have this thing of, seeing your astrology and horoscope. And my mother came and said, Sudha, the astrologer says that, you will become a big name, you will achieve something, you will achieve the impossible. So I laughed at my mom and I said, Mom, if I was normal, probably I could even think of it. But after this incident, how? I said, you still believe in astrology? But at that time, my grandmother had, given me a piece of advice. She said, forget the people beneath you. Just trust the God, because you had gone to the temple and you were coming back when you met with this accident. So nothing can go wrong. Probably there is a reason behind this. And I believed in her. I trusted in her. I waited for 2 long years. And the moment I was about to leave the hospital was when Dr. P.K. Sethi got this Raman Magsaysay Award for the Jaipur Fort. And for me, it was like God sent. And my grandmother told me also. She said, see, I told you will get an answer. But I still didn't believe her. I came back to Mumbai from Chennai, met this, I saw this artificial limb, which looked very natural. Then I wrote to Dr. P.K. Sethi, who was at that time the busiest doctor in town. He had no time to breathe after the Raman Magsaysay Award. But the moment I wrote a letter to him, within 3 days I got a reply from him saying that please come down. And I not mentioned that I want to dance. I was just another amputee who wanted to meet the doctor. The moment I entered, I went to Jaipur, I met him, and I said, Doc, I want to dance. So he says, yeah, why not? I said, is it that simple as you think? It's Bharatanatyam, it has a lot of footwork. So he says, yeah, I know it, because my daughter-in-law is a classical dancer. So I know you can definitely do it. Then I came back with this limb, and for me it was like starting from the scratch, because my father worked for the American Library, so he was very close to the press in Mumbai. And my mother made sure that the news should not even leak to my father that I had started dancing. I had started practicing. There were days when I wanted to give it up because the stump used to bleed. But somewhere at night when I used to go to sleep, my parents thought that I was asleep, but I used to keep listening to their talks. And my mother used to say, oh my God, how much of torture, how much of pain is this girl undergoing? But at that time I decided, I could see that pain, that my father and mother were undergoing, and but they made sure that they kept smiling throughout the day in front of me, and I saw them shedding tears at night. That was the time that I made a promise to myself. I said, Sudha, bear all the pain. No pain, no gain. I just wanted to make my parents feel proud of the fact. I didn't want them to feel disappointed about life. I didn't want them to feel, why did God do this to their only child? And that was the time that I kept continuously praying to God. I said, just give me that strength that with this artificial limb, let me come back to stage. I will just perform once. After that, I will never ever come on stage. But I just want that moment where my parents should stand on the stage and feel proud of the fact that their daughter has done the impossible. So for 2 years, it was a rigorous, I was actually reliving my childhood. What I had missed out, probably I didn't understand at that time, but that 2 years was only focusing on dance, dance, and dance. Finally, after 2 years, I told my dad, and my dad was not aware of this. So I told my dad that I'm ready to dance, and he said, have you lost it? I said, no, Dad, I've been practicing behind your back for the last 2 years. I want to get on stage, but please don't make a public announcement because I don't want to be laughed at in case I fail. And he was like, he said, are you sure, Sudha? Can you do it? You're supposed to be dancing for 2.5 hours. Can you do it? I said, yes, I will do it. And my Guruji at that time had taken an oath. He had stopped eating. He had stopped drinking water. For 7 days, he sat in front of Lord Nataraja and prayed. He says, get my student back. I want nothing beyond this. And the day dawned. It was January 28th. I was going on stage, and then, in the morning, there was this article in the Indian Express which said, loses a foot, walks a mile. And I asked my dad, I said, how did this come out? He says, I don't know. He called up one of his best friends. He said, why did you do it? He says, Mr. Chandran, just chill. Even if you want to fire us, you will fire us only on Monday. This is a Saturday edition. So we just wanted the world to know that she's coming back. And the curtains opened, and it was a jam-packed auditorium. The first step that I took into the auditorium, and the 1,000+ people stood up and clapped for me and said, welcome back, Sudha. And I thought the battle was won. After that, for 2.5 hours, I just danced even without realizing that I was dancing with the Jaipur foot. It's only after I finished my last item was when I looked at my guru and I saw him crying with his Natwangam in his hands. My mother was standing in the wings and she was crying, but I could not see my father. And I really didn't know where he was. After the performance, when I went back home, is when my father came up to me and he touched my feet, and I think that was the best award that I've got in my life. And when I asked him, I said, Dad, why did you do this to me? He says, I did not bow down for my daughter. I bowed to Lord Saraswati, who is there in your feet. I think I'd won my battle. I'd made my parents feel very proud. And of course, after that, there was no looking back.